population. They know that there are consumers. They know that if I come out with a mobile, in America I can sell X number of sets. In India I can sell much more. So our power, population can be converted into making our population very, very skilled persons in various spheres. In Indian brain, and I'm not saying because the whole audience is Indian except one from Sri Lanka, which is as good as a part and parcel of all of us at one country really in that sense. But I'm saying this, we have excellent brain. There is no doubt about the Indian brain. And with unity, if we can share our brain and economic sphere. Now economic spheres, we are talking of a lawyers forum. Lawyers forum is necessary because these countries don't have the same type of laws. They don't have same type of attitudes, nor do they have same type of language. In fact, about 2 years back when I was in Beijing, I asked one of the senior elected representative of the lawyers in China, and over a lunch table, and I asked him a very, very blunt question that, does your Supreme Court decide against your government? He talked to me very slowly. Mr. Parekh, never against the central government, but sometimes against some provincial government with the permission of the central government. Now this is the state of the Supreme Court of China, that they have no independence. They'll be thrown out in a day if they even talk something. So even the president of a bar there, he talked to me very softly because he didn't want other Chinese to know that he is passing on this great secret to me. But be that be, it is an important country. Today it has more population, although we are threatening to take them over in 2020 by population standard also. Their autocratic rules is giving them some advantages also, although I don't think it's worth losing your democracy or the democratic right for anything. They can do what they like. What the leaders decide is done. People have to follow, otherwise you'll have problems. Even your existence is in problems. So all that, but with that, they are far ahead of us. And there was a time when they didn't know English language. And now there is a lot of, in the International Court of Justice, a lady judge of China, she speaks excellently fluent English. The youngsters in that country are specially sent at the government cost. You go and study in the foreign countries, learn English, learn various things. So they have a lot of advantages. We have the disadvantage of democracy, but I'll prefer to live with disadvantage of democracy. But this is how, now if these 5 countries get together, most important thing is money, and therefore trade, commerce, international trade and commerce. Because if we are united and we lay down certain rules of games, in fact in the last, this year's BRICS meeting, where our Prime Minister Narendra Modi participated, a BRICS bank is set up, and the headquarters is going to be in China, but the first president is going to be an Indian. Now, this bank, because as I said, even World Bank, etc., have a slant toward this, pardon my using the same word again, the white skin. And therefore, you need a bank, because without bank, you cannot prosper, you cannot go ahead. So, therefore, when you have international trade, you need international trade lawyers. You need lawyers who will guide not only India, not only these 5 countries, but they will have to lay down the rules, keeping in view what will be the attitude and laws which other countries will throw against our united front, if I may call it. People will not be happy. Look at European Union. There was a lot of problem. So many communist countries were there, so many democratic countries were there. Gradually they all realized that we as European can do much better. One by one, everyone joined the European Union. UK was the last to give up their pound in favor of euro. They were the last, and very hesitantly they said that against highest court in our country, appeal will lie to a European judiciary. These 2 things they did at the end, but even they fell in line and agreed. Why? Because they think that joint euro and joint united we stand, as I said. That's how they have done. Now, therefore, we have got to have something, and therefore some of them are going to throw stones if BRICS becomes powerful. They are going to, there are method of throwing stones, the throwing stones can be in a very, very subtle way, and say that we'll not do this to BRICS because now they are not doing this to us and things like that. So we'll have to see. Therefore, you need international lawyers. You know the lawyers who knows international law. You need the lawyers who will know the laws of these 5 countries. Because, as I said, what is the position in China? Russia is no better as far as the independent judiciary or the human rights, etc. is concerned. South Africa, of course, has the same legal system as we have. We have both inherited from the British. Now, therefore, what is the international law? What is the laws of our 5 countries? What is that laws can be done by us to get united and not to be cowed down by any other countries or group of countries who would hate that we are together. In fact, in the 2009 BRICS conference which took place, BRICS Leaders Conference in Russia, they laid down 4 principles: democratic and transparent decision making and implementation process at the International Financial Organization. Strong legal basis, this was their number 2. Number 3 was compatibility of activities of effective national regulatory institutions and international standard setting bodies. Strengthening of risk management and supervisory practices. The risk management is going to be much higher for us because we are economically not that strong as compared to the Europeans and Americans. And in the subsequent seminar, they said mutual respect and non-interference in each other's sovereignty, non-confrontation, opposition to use or threat of force in international community, centrality of multilateralism on global issues, mutual respect for each other's choice of development paths, openness, solidarity, non-block nature, neutrality with regard to third parties. Now, this is how we have to proceed. Fortunately, I have put down my other detailed ideas into writing, and I've given copy to Prashant. I'm sure you will be able to have it. And I request this August Organization, Bar Association of India, which was really born along with our independence, as it were, and which has members from all over the country, that we take a lead in formulating this, because out of these 5 countries, our legal system is perhaps the best, our lawyers are perhaps the best, and a large number of lawyers in our country have a lot of international exposure because they are today Indian companies, and foreign companies also take their advice, so they know much better. And let me tell you, Chinese now are sending large number of people to study law abroad. The government finances them. Our poor, many brilliant law students can't go because 20 lakhs to 40 lakhs for 9 months LLM is not possible for an ordinary Indian to spend. Chinese government say anyone to learn English, to learn law, to learn various other disciplines, the government spends the money and sends it to them. But be that may, Indian brain, as I said, is definitely much better, and Indian legal brain is very good. Indian legal brain has the advantage of our constitution and interpretation of our constitution with the help of bar and bench, because you always say that judiciary did, but judiciary can do nothing unless the bar is there to argue and to guide the judges. So credit must equally go to bar and bench when our constitution has been interpreted. If we were to wake up our constitutional framers that Dr. Ambedkar, did you mean Article 14 as this, what Supreme Court has interpreted? Article 19 as this, Article 21 as, they say, oh my God, I never intended this way. But it is developed by bar and bench, and that is a great advantage for us, and therefore in any legal lawyers forum for these BRICS countries, India will have to take the lead. And with this, I thank all of you. In fact, I have taken the chairman's permission. At 12:40, I will be leaving this place for something, and I apologize to each one of you. Normally, I don't do it, but there is some place where I have to reach at 1 o'clock. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parekh. I'm sure people will want to read your paper as well. Thank you for giving us the essentials of the BRICS concept. I certainly will read it so as to educate myself and to protect myself against future occasions like this one, when I'm suddenly asked by Mr. Prashant Kumar to chair a session on this subject, I hope to try and be a little bit more competent and better informed. Now, the next speaker is Pinky Anand, but before I invite her to to start her, she's somebody who is a colleague, and we have known each other for many, many years. But I think many of you have had the occasion of watching more of Pinky Anand on television, debates and exchanges, rather than arguing in court. I myself see her rarely, so I'm very pleased to be able to see her in person, and even look forward even more to listening to her on this topic. So may I please invite you.
For several years, and had the pleasure of working, the chairman of this association, Mr. Todi, Mr. Parekh, who's rendered an amazing address right now, Mr. Prashant Kumar. I think what I find most interesting in life is to be part of a change, to be part of a process that is evolving. If we continue in a state of static growth, we are almost on a horizontal level. If, however, we come into a new process, a new thought, a new concept, a new evolution, I think that sets us thinking. So here we are, all of us, ladies and gentlemen, not only as lawyers, but as citizens of this country, as citizens of this great global entity which is the world. And I think we are looking at some of the most dynamic changes, as we have seen, for example, in the 1990s, when the process of liberalization started in India. I think we started looking at a new era, and we started dealing with it. So as professionals, yes, we will provide the services that any professional would provide, and particularly lawyers. But more so, this evolution promises to set right a global deficit, which Mr. Parekh has outlined to some extent. The BRICS countries, a new concept, a new evolution, a new getting together of concept, and of addressing the concerns of a large cross-section of society, which so far had been, if not ignored, sidelined, if not ignored, suppressed, if not ignored, overwhelmed by the majority, so to say, particularly if you talk about the emerging economies. India has had its own situations, and I in fact, am a strong nationalist, as all of us are. I do believe that there are so many concerns. In fact, when we argue in courts, ladies and gentlemen, as some of you do, I always say one thing: let us not follow in law or in principle what is being followed necessarily by, let us say, America. Even though I had the occasion to study at Harvard Law School and work in America, let us not take the concept of England, let us not take the concept of European Union, let us talk about India. There are certain priorities that our country requires, there are certain priorities that developing countries require. And in that context, I'll just mention to you, for example, a ship-breaking case that I was doing at one point. And there was a stay from the ship coming into Gujarat, where it was to be broken and disbanded. The opposition to that was that the environmental concerns in the world actually prevent such shipbreaking. India has one of the largest shipbreaking industries in the world, ladies and gentlemen. So does Bangladesh. And one of my arguments was, well, let's either, in principle, we have a law which permits shipbreaking, either we have, in principle, a business which permits shipbreaking. If it does, please do not stop it on the ground that there are other foreign conventions or foreign laws that prevent this activity from taking place in the domain of those foreign countries. We require a system to address our concerns. And that exactly is what ultimately BRICS is about. BRICS has been brought about, ultimately, as Mr. Parekh has said, to put together 5 countries which represent, as Prashant said, half the world's population. And in fact, not only half the world's population, some of the youngest population in the world. India has today one of the largest youth populations in the world. And I might say that as far as China is concerned, in fact, China has its own issues on population. Today, China has a one-child policy. And because of that, soon, India may find itself superseding China as far as population is concerned. But anyways, that is a traditional concept of Samuelson. I remember when I was doing economics in college, there was supply and demand. So the question was, when the demand is higher than the supply, automatically there is a deficit. But India and the growing concerns and the growing commercialization of the world has shown that in fact supply and demand have to have a different connotation. Numbers and population, and particularly the youth, which forms the backbone of any country, have a lot of promises which they can actually perform, and a lot of situations where they can actually render services. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, on the BRICS concern, I must say that I'm sure some of you have gone through it, but today we need to evolve ourselves into understanding how BRICS is going to come into function, what the priorities of BRICS is, how it is seeking to put into place a new international order as far as two issues are concerned. One is the concerns on a basic level, let us say, as Prashant said, about water, about food security, about owning our seeds, traditional plant varieties, poverty, malnutrition. These are one of the concerns at one level. The other level, which we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen, we as in India and the other members of the BRICS community, are the emerging economies. Today we command a substantial portion of the world's business and trade ventures. In that capacity, we need to be able to hold our own. So the BRICS concept which brings it about is not ultimately to dislodge something which is existing, but to start a process of a new evolution. For example, the setting up of the bank, the BRICS Bank as it is called. If I might just tell you about the BRICS Bank itself, the projections in fact show that China will be the largest creditor and economy in the world, with the rest of the BRICS nations to be amongst the top 10. And the decision to create the new development bank, which is going to be based in Shanghai, will contribute to the efforts to eliminate infrastructure gaps. Today, that is the need of the hour. Building infrastructure, China has shown its way. The other countries, including India, this has been one of the prime concerns. We need to proceed further in our development of infrastructure and meet sustainable needs of the BRICS countries and other emerging markets. The initial authorized capital of the new development bank is $100 million, including $50 billion of equally shared initial subscribed capital. It will become one of the largest multilateral financial development institutions. Importantly, it will be open for other countries to join. There will also be a creation of the contingent reserve arrangement or currency reserve pool, initially sized at $100 billion, which will help the BRIC countries against short-term liquidity pressures and international financial shocks. Together with the NDB, these new instruments will contribute to further cooperation on macroeconomic policies. And in fact, when talking about BRICS, one of the statements which was made as far as BRICS is concerned in broad vision and shared prosperity, it is the overarching objective and strong shared desire for peace, security, development and cooperation that brought together BRICS countries with a total population of nearly 3 billion from different continents. BRICS aims at contributing significantly to the development of humanity and establishing a more equitable and fair world. The 21st century should be marked by peace, harmony, cooperation and scientific development. And along the same lines, ladies and gentlemen, when our Prime Minister spoke at Brazil, some of his statements, if I might just read for you, Excellencies, we have an opportunity to define the future of not just our countries, but the world at large. Coming from a land where the idea of Vasudev Kutumbakam, the whole world being one family, is rooted deep in our ethos, I take this as a great responsibility. Our steps must, and I find that very important and interesting, our steps must reinforce the hopes, aspirations, and confidence of the developing world. With the advent of the new BRICS Bank, the economies have now stepped into the domain of an organized entity. The Fortaleza Summit, which is part of the BRICS Summit, gives us a clue regarding the purpose stating. We remain disappointed and concerned with the current non-implementation of the 2010 IMF reforms, which negatively impacts on the IMF legitimacy, credibility, and effectiveness. Predictably, an environment like the present demands a growth of laws, regulations, and administrative apparatus, which in turn translates to a growing need for legal professionals, such as all of us, capable of practicing law, traversing international domains to enter the sector. To fulfill this need, various organizations have been given a significant boost to their legal department. Each country now boasts of several firms of association, comprised of hundreds, in the case of China, more than 1,000 lawyers, and in-house legal departments, such as the 500 Lawyer General Counsel Office of India's Tata Group, that are almost as large. A number of business organizations have been formed to fulfill this emerging need for transnational legal professionals. These associations, independent of the bar, represent the interests of lawyers within the political structure. In India, there are various societies which have been set up. In China, in Brazil, elite law firms have formed an association called Law Firm Study Center in 1983, which proved central in enabling private lawyers to build capacity to participate in international dispute settlement institutions such as the World Trade Organization's dispute settlement body. Just coming on this, there are several chapters, and ladies and gentlemen, it would take forever for us to go into what BRICS is doing and what it proposes to do, because it is an evolving process. But recently, I must share with you, we had the honor of being able to represent the country and the Bar Association of India, and we went to China in a delegation which consisted of Professor Shivakumar, who is the director of the Indian Law Institute. Mr. Venugopal was to head the same, but he was unwell and could not manage to reach. Mr. Prashant Kumar, who is the General Secretary of the Bar Association, and myself. What was most interesting was, China, as Mr. Parekh was portraying, has certain different priorities, but actually not. The question is, as I mentioned, there are two fronts on which all of us operate. One front is the aspect of the need and the order of the emerging economies, which includes, for example, issues of poverty, malnutrition, food, seed sovereignty, human rights, rule of law, and these issues. The second is the domain of international law and trade and all the processes which are concerned there too. And even though, for example, China has a different system, we met some of the Chinese Law Society's presidents, we met the people from the Politburo, we met the liaison office's vice chairman, and in fact had a very pleasurable occasion to find, for example, that the arbitration law, in principle, is approximately in the same domain as the Indian proposition. And you'll be very happy to know that Prashant, I and Professor Shivakumar have discussed